Good morning, everyone. Traditionally, in NSI meet, uh, entertainment program is on the first day night. In the afternoon, it's not allowed. But I think to break the monotony, Gigi wanted some entertainment for you in between these 12 very tough neurology topics. So after a period of very devastating maladies, I just want to remind you that the life outside ICU is very beautiful and romantic. It's full of butterflies and flowers, and we have one of the most beautiful emotions, that's romantic love. So my talk is on kissing chemicals and hugging receptors, the neurobiology of love. First Valentine's Day probably was not 2000 years back, but about 300 crore years back. Remember, our Earth was only 150 crore years old at that time, and we had only microbes as inhabitants. And the atmosphere was very romantic, smell of ammonia, methane, slush, lightning. So two microbes decided to meet, and probably everything started from there. It led to sexual reproduction and formation of families, and led to two attachment systems. One is a mother-child attachment, because to protect the child, the mother has to look after, so a mother-child attachment is necessary. And the second one is a partner attachment system. So it's between two mature adults. We stay attached to have kids and raise a family. So it's important for family. Partner attachment led to so many inevitable social evils like marriage, children, in-laws, loans, unpaid credit cards, and washing clothes. But one should remember, apart from tough mothers-in-law, it also gave us something very beautiful, that is romantic love. So it's very difficult to define love. There are a lot of definitions in dictionaries and medical textbooks, but something very intense and positive emotion towards a partner. Romantic love is universal. It's a common theme in many paintings, novels, films. Many became manics, many became philosophers, some committed suicide. Battles were fought and won and lost. Romantic love is universal because our brain is wired for that. And that's why almost all of you are very romantic. Just a show of hands. Please raise your hands if you have not ever fallen in love for a few minutes in your lifetime. And I'm sure nobody is going to raise their hands because we are wired for it. We are all romantic creatures. You remember this gentleman, Semir Seki. I'm sure you would have read his book, The Vision of Brain. It's about occipital lobe and the processing of vision, higher order of vision. He was the one who first committed the fMRI study on love. The experiment was very simple. The person who were in intensely love with somebody were put in the fMRI machine, and they were shown a picture of their partner, and they studied which all brain areas were lit up. And as a control, they showed other persons, all almost the same age and same gender with same duration of friendship. And this was the first picture of fMRI studies in love. You can see the areas which are constantly activated are ventral tegmental area and the caudate. Subsequently, we had a flurry of fMRI studies. We had better machines and better protocols. And you can see there are a lot of areas which are constantly activated, and some areas are consistently inactivated. Areas activated: ventral tegmental area, medial insula, anterior cingulate cortex, hypothalamus, hippocampus, nucleus accumbens, and caudate. And the areas which are inactivated include frontal, amygdala, temporal poles, and parieto-temporal junction. Love is a highly rewarding experience. That's because the reward pathway is the one which is involved in love. So we register our partner as a reward. And this is the same pathway which is involved in addiction, and that's why we call love an addiction. In Hindi they say, it's a sabse kadarnak nasha hai. And dopamine, as you know, is a neurotransmitter involved in reward pathway. So whenever you see or come across or think about your partner, your reward system is activated, and there is a flooding of dopamine in your reward system, and that gives you that intense emotion of love. And that's why love is rewarding and pleasurable. And that's why many of you keep your partner's face as a screensaver. So every time you look at her face or his face, you have a flooding of dopamine in your reward pathway. There are two more main players in this pathway. One is oxytocin and vasopressin. So gone are those days when oxytocin was a gynecologist molecule and vasopressin was a cardiologist, nephrologist molecule. It now belongs to us, the most romantic doctors. That's a neurologist. So it's our molecule. And oxytocin and vasopressin, they have got significant role in our evolution. They are involved in our social cognition, emotions, and friendship and attachment. So they have got a bigger role than controlling your blood pressure or milk ejection or parturition. We all know about the hypothalamic nucleus, paraventricular and supraoptic nucleus, from where these chemicals are released and stored in the posterior pituitary. But more important are those neurons which arise from this nuclei, and they've got intense connections to vagal complex, arcuate nuclei, and amygdala. And here we have vasopressin and oxytocin as the neurotransmitters. And oxytocin, as you know, is involved in milk ejection reflex and parturition reflex. It's also released when you cuddle somebody, when you cuddle your child, or when you hug your partner. There is a flooding of oxytocin in your brain. And this oxytocin, again, stimulates the reward pathway. And it produces a relaxation effect. It reduces the steroid hormones. It reduces your fear. So that's why love and your family and your wife is a relaxing or soothing presence for you at the end of the day. Vasopressin, again, is more predominant in males. Again, it increases the partner bonding, but there is a mild difference. Instead of relaxing, it may increase the aggression a bit. And there is a stimulation of the HP axis, and the steroids slightly go up when the vasopressin is stimulated. That's because vasopressin is more predominant in males. Why? Because mother, she has to care, so oxytocin predominates. Father, he has to protect the child as well as a spouse from intruders, so vasopressin is more active. It produces aggression against intruders. And these oxytocin and vasopressin receptors are, again, expressed in our reward pathway. That's a dopaminergic pathway. So whenever there is a flooding of oxytocin and vasopressin, this reward pathway is again reinforced. And we learned a lot about oxytocin and vasopressin receptors from these small rodents. They are called voles. There are two species. One is the prairie voles, and other is the meadow voles. The prairie voles, they are very highly social. They are monogamous. So once they mate, they stay together for the rest of their life for 6 or 7 years. Both parents take care of the offsprings, and the young voles stay in the nest for quite some time till they become mature. So it's just like human beings. They are very monogamous and faithful. Whereas mundane voles, they are very solitary, very promiscuous, and they do not form a long-lasting pair bond with their partner, lasts only for a couple of weeks. And even the mother, she is not interested to take care of the kids. After 3 or 4 weeks, the kids are thrown out of their hole. So they are specialized in one-night stands. So both these species are very highly related genetically, but they have different behaviors. And the studies show this is because of the difference in the density of receptors. On the front side, you can see the oxytocin and vasopressin receptor density in the monogamous prairie voles. You can see everything is black because of the high density of the receptors. Whereas on the other side, you can see the receptors are very, very scanty in monogamous voles. So everything depends on the oxytocin receptors and their activity. And they conducted studies on these prairie voles, and they found that soon after the mating, if you give oxytocin infusion, the pair bonding is much more stronger. If after the mating you give some oxytocin antagonist, there is no pair bonding. So we can modulate this oxytocin activity and increase or decrease the pair bonding. Remember, it's not the absolute value or the level of blood level of oxytocin or vasopressin which matters. It's also the amount of receptors that you have, and that also is genetically determined. So you become more romantic and faithful if you have more OT and vasopressin receptors in your reward pathway. Monogamy is very rare in animals, less than 2%. When it comes to primates, it's about 15%. And I'm not sure whether we will be monogamous in the next half of this century. It's going to be an outdated concept. We will not be polygamous. We will be something called serially monogamous, one after another and another after another. So exclusively one at a time, but serially. There are a few other players also in this one, like testosterone. Especially in males, there is a reduction in the level of testosterone in the early part of the love. Nerve growth factor, it's high, indicating stress. Serotonin, there is a lower level of serotonin in the initial part of the love. And lower level of serotonin leads to obsession, and that's why we are obsessed with our partner. And in the early phase, there is an activation of the steroid pathway. There is an increased activity of HP axis and increased cortisol. So there is an increase in stress, and stress in turn increases the pair bonding. And that's why in many of the films you see the hero and heroine come together during the time of adversity, and at the end of the film, they go for a date. So stress increases the chance for falling in love, and it increases the pair bonding. Deactivation of amygdala. As you know, amygdala is associated with fear. In the early part of romance, there is a deactivation of amygdala, and that's why these young kids do so many foolish bravery acts. Love is blind because your prefrontal lobe is shut down. There is no judgment, proper judgment. So many times we feel weird about the choice of the partner, of our friend, of our kids, and we'll ask them, are you blind? So this blindness is mainly because of prefrontal judgment is blocked by infatuation. But this lack of judgment is only for that particular partner. He can judge a book, he can judge a dish, or he can judge a movie. There is no problem with the judgment, but it's only towards that particular partner. And it's very good in one aspect, because for that particular person, he feels his partner is the most perfect which is available, and that increases the bonding. So thanks to prefrontal lobe inhibition, we fall in love with our partner and think that she or he is the perfect match for us. Moral matters are suspended, and that's why there is a high amount of sexual promiscuity, and this is a common theme in many of the well-famous classics, Anna Karenina, or you know the story of Helen of Troy eloping with Paris. So this lack of judgment, amygdala suppression and mate guarding due to vasopressin leads to jealousy, and probably that's the reason we see a number of crimes committed in the last 1 year. All these innocent girls were killed by the so-called lovers. So blame it on the neurobiology of love. TPO junction, that's temporoparietal occipital junction, is the one which is concerned with the feeling of you and me. So that the you-me divide lives in your parietotemporal junction. And this part also is inactivated during intense love. So the partners, they do not feel any difference between himself and the other. So that's actually a union of two minds. They feel they are one and the same. And androgens, as you know, is involved in sex drive. Testosterone is needed for sexual act and lust. But androgens are not fully, absolutely required for romantic love. They are different because sex drive and romance are totally different entities. Sex drive, as you know, the center is the hypothalamus and the mediators are the androgens. Whereas in our romantic love, it's a reward pathway and dopamine. Sex drive is non-specific. It's not towards a single partner but to anyone. Whereas romantic love is highly specific towards a particular partner. And aim of sex drive is only a sexual union. So once that act is done, there is a reduction in the sex drive. Whereas romantic love continues unabated for years and decades. So one night stand is totally different from romantic love. One night stand is due to testosterone and sex drive, whereas romantic love is due to a reward pathway and dopamine. Now the question is, we know this much about neurobiology. Can we create love, enhance love, or maintain love? Very difficult to say. But there are three stages. One is the lust, as a sex drive. This is seeking a sexual union with a partner. Here, the main important factor is the testosterone. And it has been found that testosterone increases sex drive, but it doesn't improve or increase the romantic love. So it's very non-specific. And steroids, again, can increase the sex drive, but again, there's an increased stress. The second part is attraction, falling in love with a particular partner. Again, the pathway is our reward pathway, and dopamine and reduced serotonin is one of the key players. You can use pheromones to increase the attraction. There are chemicals called pheromones which increases the attraction, or stimulants, or probably oxytocin also has some role. Whereas in the third stage, that maintaining the attachment between two partners, again comes our oxytocin and vasopressin and the reward pathway. So you can alter that. You can use oxytocin and vasopressin to increase the bond between two partners. Or you can use something like an entactogens. Entactogens are chemicals which increase the affection between partners, and one of the classical examples is that MDMA, which is a drug they use in rave parties. Use that, you feel love towards everyone. So there are pheromones. One of the commonest one is is a tongue twister, androstenedione, which can be used in perfumes and deodorants. And use it, and all the girls will form a queue behind you. And what about oxytocin and vasopressin? We have oxytocin nasal sprays, which are used during family counseling to increase the bond between two partners. This is one which you can find out on Amazon. These are available in Amazon. So to conclude, love is universal because we are wired for it. All of us have that dopamine pathway inside us. Love is a pleasurable and rewarding experience because of the dopaminergic and reward system. Love is an obsession because there is a low serotonin in the initial part. Love is stressful in the initial part because of the nerve growth factor, and corticotropin releasing hormone is high during the initial part. Later, the love becomes relaxing because of OT and VP. They relax the brain. Love is dedication. That's because of the OT-VP receptors that make you monogamous and remain faithful. Love knows no fear because of your amygdala suppression. Love is blind because of lack of prefrontal judgment. Love is union of two souls because there is no you-me divide because of TPO suppression. And love is not lust because it's totally different from sex drive, which is hypothalamus mediated. In fact, my talk was said to be the last, but it was advanced. So that's why I put finally, love is the last topic in this session, but I think there is one more.